How did the management legend Jack Welch transform General Electric? Hi everyone, my name is Johannes and welcome to this channel. Welcome to Mastering Consulting. On this channel, I want to share the learnings and experiences from my own current journey in management consulting to help you to become more successful and living a balanced life. And if you're new to this channel, then please subscribe to it and also leave a thumb up. This will help you that you don't miss any new video here on this channel. And today I want to try something new. I will talk about a case study. I will talk about the transformation of General Electric. And before we start, maybe just to give you a little bit of background why I want to experiment a little bit with case studies here on this channel. So the reason is that I want to learn myself something new every day. And I am currently at the moment or at a stage of my career where I say, okay, I want to learn more about business stories. I want to learn more how, in the past companies did some large transformations, because I think this will be a very important topic for the next 2 to 3 years. And I really try to learn a lot about that myself. So I thought, maybe that would be also interesting for you. So what I do now is maybe on a weekly basis, we have to see that I read case studies, try to summarize them and present them here on this channel, kind of a summary of this case study. And I think, this might also help you to get a little bit of, understanding how certain business concepts work in the practical environment. And I think, for every aspiring consultant, it's also very important to, learn about business itself, not only about all the consulting skills, but also to learn, of course, about business. And hopefully this brings value. And I hope that you enjoy it the same way that I do, because for me, this was a lot of fun reading through this case study and really, thinking about it, reflecting about it, and summarizing the results. So that being said, please leave some feedback down in the comments below. If you like this format, then I will keep it up. If you don't like it, then please also let me know. Maybe if I can do something better, maybe other topics that you are interested in, just write them down in the comments so that I know what you think about it. Good. Then with that being said, I would say let's start. Let's talk about the transformation of General Electric. And to summarize the situation, or why this is so interesting, we have to take a look at the situation of General Electric. So General Electric is a very traditional American firm, and there have been 3 main CEOs up until the 2000s who kind of had a huge impact on the firm. And there was the time of Borch, which was from 1961 until 1970. Then we had the phase or the era of Jones from 1971 until 1980. And then from 1981 up until 2000, we have the era of Jack Welch. And what you can see here is that, especially in the era of Jack Welch, we had a tremendous growth at General Electric. So if you take a look, so revenue is something about 30 billion when Jack Welch took over GE, and it's around 130 billion when he leaves the company in 2000. And it's incredible because revenue only over roughly 20 years increased by 376%. So it's almost quadrupled, which is huge. And also profitability even higher, increased by 670%. And so this is just an incredible performance that you hardly see anywhere else. And the big question is, Jack Welch is a management legend. If there are rankings about the most successful CEOs of all times, then Jack Welch is almost all the time, in the top 3 or top 5. He's a huge legend in the management world. And the big question is, how did he do it? What were the single steps of his transformation? And the reason why that is so interesting also for us as consultants is because, based on these cases, we can learn a lot about, how those transformations work also over, a longer time period, and what kind of measures he implemented. And I want to guide you through, today through the 4 main phases of the GE transformation. And let's start directly into it. So the first phase of the transformation was in the early 1980s when Jack Welch took over. And the situation was, that the sales was kind of, it wasn't decreasing, it wasn't increasing, it stayed kind of at the same level. We had slightly decreasing profitability, but we had a lot of structural issues. So the overhead was way too high, the company wasn't really agile anymore, and this entire operation was more on the downwards spiral than on the upwards spiral. And when Jack Welch took over, he implemented some serious changes. So first of all, he implemented the fix, sell, and close program. And what he basically did was that he said, okay, we only want to be either number 1 or number 2 in the business area. And this means every business that GE had where they weren't number 1 or number 2, or where they hadn't had the prospect to become number 1 or number 2, they closed or sold. And this was an immense portfolio restructuring, because they said, okay, we want to be number 1 in our business areas, and if we cannot be number 1, then we don't want to compete. So they sold a lot of stuff. They restructured their portfolio, got rid of all the businesses with low or negative profitability, and really focused on the important things. Then also they ran a huge cost-cutting program. So they dramatically reduced bureaucracy, they dramatically reduced overhead costs by really going through and saying, okay, we need to make processes much leaner, we need to cut overhead. And this was very important, and this is also very typical. And he implemented a new leadership team where he really said, okay, we want to have completely new values, we want to have a new leadership style. And those 3 steps are very, very common if you do restructuring or turnaround projects. So it's first the restructuring of the portfolio, then it's cost cutting, especially you take a look at the quick wins. So you try to figure out, okay, what kind of cost positions can I get rid of? And then you also implement typically a new leadership team, because if you want to, change direction, if you want to go into a new direction, obviously you need a new leadership team for that. And revenue increase in those first, let's say 5 years, roughly 1981 to 1985, was 35%, and a profit increase of 50%. So you see profit increase was higher than revenue increase, and this is the result of the cost reduction measures. So quite impressive this first phase, but it becomes better. So in the second phase, they implemented, or they tried to rebuild and form a new foundation. So the first phase was rather, getting rid of the old, trying to restructure the company, and then they tried to build a foundation. So what they did was they implemented some cultural change. They implemented a so-called workout program. And this program was a program where they really tried to get a lot of business ideas from the middle management. So they implemented kind of workshop structure where they really tried to collect ideas how to improve the business bottom up. The thing was that back then GE was more a very hierarchical firm that really, was steered top down with kind of a very strict, hierarchical, more traditional leadership style. And they really wanted to break this up and create a kind of bottom-up ideation culture where they really try to figure out, okay, what kind of ideas can we generate from our, middle management or even the level below. So they tried to do that by implementing the workout program. They also tried to apply best practices. And this was kind of, not really new, but kind of uncommon back then. This was the time also where all the strategy consultancies came up And the big advantage of having strategy consultancies like, especially like McKinsey, BCG back then, also Bain, is that they collect a lot of best practices from other companies. Since they have projects in each company, they really know, okay, what are best practices from this industry, maybe from that industry. And this is also a reason why people hire consultancies, to kind of learn of those best practices. So they hired consultancies and they really try to figure out, okay, what is the competition doing better than us and what can we implement here? They also invested in their employees, so they set up a new training program. So they heavily invested into their workforce. They really tried to kind of improve the people, to really invest in them, to really try to hire the best people that they can get in order to be as good as they can. Also, back then, they focused on a global expansion. And this is very interesting because in the first, I think, 5 to 7 years, they really tried to downsize, okay? They really tried to focus on the core business. And Jack Welch's goal was really to, fix the core business first and only then thinking about globalization. And I think this is very interesting because, now in the summary, this seems like, just one step following the other. But at the end, it's like 5 years of focus only on the core business. And only when the foundation was formed, then they focused on rebuilding and global expansion. And I think this is very remarkable, that kind of focus. So he tried, to didn't get distracted by all of those global opportunities, because he knew, okay, I have to fix the core first and then I can expand. And also very interesting is that they implemented some leadership development programs. And what is very, very famous is the Crotonville training facility. And this was back then in the 80s. Also, if you read the biography of Jack Welch, was kind of, this huge a training facility, and was kind of very unique that GE had this kind of training center where they sent all their high potentials, and where Jack Welch also was personally involved in leadership training and stuff like that. So this is very famous, and they also implemented some new formats like 360-degree feedback, where everyone in the company was evaluated. And we will see that also in the next transformation phases, that the focus on the leadership team and on the workforce in general was really a huge part, both in a positive way, but also in a kind of negative way. In a positive way, because Jack Welch really invested in his leadership team. He really tried to make them the best possible, but in a negative way because, or depends on the position, but in a negative way because he really was very quick about cutting, the bottom 10 to 15% of the workforce, to lay them off. So that was a huge part of his leadership style. And the result was, again, moderate revenue increase, but again, very, very strong profit increase of 72%. Then the next stage is growth and culture. This was in the early 90s. And here they tried to implement a boundaryless company. So they try to remove silos. And this is also something that you very often have within companies, especially if we talk about those large global conglomerates, where they, where each unit really operates on their own, where there is some competition between the units, so that they don't want to share knowledge, that they don't want to share ideas. And as you can imagine, especially in an increasing complex world, in an increasing globalized world, this is definitely not the way you want to have your organization be running. And that's why they try to break up those silos. So they really tried to increase the collaboration between the departments. They tried to exchange ideas. They built kind of forums to exchange those ideas and to foster collaboration. Also, they had a very ambitious planning process. First of all, they really simplified the planning process. And this is something that I really like, because I worked with so many companies who have a very, very complex bottom-up kind of planning process, where they really think about, okay, can we increase, or can we make a profitability margin of 14.305%. And Jack Welch took a completely different approach. He said, okay, you just tell me if you achieve 14, 15 or 16%, forget about the comma. This is just waste of time calculating all of the decimals. It's rather important to, you know, only focus on the main direction we want to go, set the goal as a stretch goal, and then we go for it. And I really like that approach because I've seen it so many times that companies spend too much time with the planning, and those numbers are in any case very inaccurate. And even if they are accurate, I mean, then you just have an accurate planning, but you haven't, you know, kind of developed your company. So this is something that I really like here. Also, they focus on new business models. So they implemented the service business here. So they also try to identify growth opportunities and really invested in those areas. And as you see, again, we have a revenue increase and a profit increase. And then the last phase that they had, it was the last phase of Jack Welch as a CEO as well. So they focused on improving the quality by implementing Six Sigma. Six Sigma is basically a production management or production optimization program from Toyota, invented by Toyota back then. And this was kind of, you know, state of the art back then to implement Six Sigma. And this really, you know, provided a lot of efficiencies on a production level and really, again, increased profitability. Also, they implemented a new leadership profile. So they only wanted to hire A players. They implemented also a 4E system. So those were 4 attributes starting with E that they wanted their leadership staff to have. And very important is the vitality curve. And this concept of a vitality curve is very, very famous because it was like that, you know, every employee got rated every year. And as I said, you know, the top, I think 10% or 15%, they really, you know, kind of got promoted, got more responsibility. And the bottom, I think, you know, 15 to 20% immediately got laid off. Okay. And this was a process that they repeated every year. They had constant evaluations, and every year they cut off the bottom 20%. Okay. It's a very, very rough measure, but of course, you know, it had a huge impact on the workforce and on the quality of GE as a whole company. And the result was, and the last thing that I want to talk about was the disruption of their own business. So they actively, and this was like, you know, late 1990s, this was like when the internet boom came up, and this was where they implemented and built some units within their own company that had the goal of disrupting their own company. So they adopted this trend of disruption from a very, very, very early stage. And they really focused on that because they saw what was coming. And I think this is very, very interesting. And the result is kind of incredible. I mean, they almost doubled revenue and they almost doubled profitability in that era. I mean, you can argue that, you know, also this was kind of a boom phase shortly before the .com bubble. But nevertheless, I think, you know, the results are just incredible. So with that being said, just to go maybe a couple of slides back, you know, this is how Jack Welch created this incredible transformation. And for me personally, it was very, very interesting to see those different measures that they took. I see many parallels to other transformation projects that I was involved in, but this is really kind of best practice. And I mean, the results are incredible. With that being said, of course, I'm interested if you liked it, if I should do more such sessions. If you have any questions, then just write them down in the comments. And with that being said, if that brought value to you, then please subscribe to this channel, leave a thumb up, and hope you have a very successful day and hope to talk to you soon. Goodbye, Johannes.